guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So in November 2020, I made a video marking the 1-year anniversary or maybe the first birthday of Disney Plus since its launch in 2019, at least in America. It launched in the UK in March of 2020, but I just wanted to make a 1 year later video commemorating the event and also discussing whether or not I believe that it was actually worth it as an additional streaming service on an already huge list of streaming services that seems to be growing day by day as companies get into the streaming business. Ultimately, in that video, which you can check out on my channel, I did come to the conclusion that Disney Plus was worth it for the price. For the price. Now, ultimately, during 2020, I didn't end up watching a lot of Disney Plus content, if I'm being honest. So even for the price, I would say that perhaps it wasn't quite as worth it as I wanted it to be, because I really wasn't on that platform very often. And a huge factor of that is the fact that so much of its library at that time was made up with kiddie content. Like, I hate to say it because I love me some good animation. Oh yeah, I love me some good Disney animated classics. Are you kidding me? I could just sustain myself on that kind of entertainment for the rest of my life and be happy. Like, truly, I could. But because I do review things, okay, and also because sometimes I do want some variation, and also because I personally don't feel very nostalgic for a lot of the stuff that's on Disney because I've seen it time and time and time again. Like, I come from the era of cassettes. I come from the era of the, onset of DVDs. I have a huge DVD collection, so a lot of the stuff that is on Disney Plus I've just seen so many times already, and I'm not particularly desperate to go back and watch them again. So as a result, like I said, I didn't really spend a lot of time on the platform. But Disney already knew Disney already knew that something was coming down the line. Okay, they already knew that this would be an issue because they wanted to reach out to a wide audience as possible. And in the case of American audiences, Disney already wasn't worried because it already has Hulu, which it has a controlling stake over. But it was all about the international audience because Disney, unlike other companies, HBO Max, Disney actually wanted to cater to its international audiences. And so she said, don't you worry, baby girl, mama's got you. Mama's got you. And so Bob Chapek in December of 2020 announced that Star would be coming. Now, what is Star? Well, Star is actually a pre-existing Hong Kong-based satellite broadcaster that started in 1991. Now, Star primarily operated in Hong Kong and in China and indeed in India, but during the whole acquisition of Fox, it came under the Disney umbrella. And so Disney very cleverly decided to use this already existing platform in order to incorporate it into Disney Plus, where it would act as this international distribution method for its adult content coming from the Fox library that it just purchased, as well as ABC, which is of course also owned by Disney, and Hulu. And so on the 23rd of February of 2021, those of us who live in the UK or Canada or Australia or New Zealand woke up to find a whole new Disney Plus. A Disney Plus like we'd never seen before, because we had this brand new edition that was called Star shining right in our faces, and with that came a ton of changes which we're going to be going through for this video. But as I already said, upon the 23rd of February release, Star is only available currently in the UK, Canada, New Zealand and Australia. But there are plans to roll it out to new territories throughout the year, so don't even worry about it. I do believe that the only population that won't be getting Star is in fact the US for once. For once, the US is missing out on something, and that is primarily because the US already has Hulu, which has a huge library of adult content already. And like I said, Disney has a controlling interest in Hulu. I believe it's over 60%. So they already have that on lock. The US audiences have already become accustomed to Hulu as a brand, so Disney didn't feel it necessary to build up a whole new brand in Star for the US audiences. But instead, for international audiences where Hulu doesn't actually have brand recognition because we don't have it. We don't have it as a service. Now, another thing to note is that all of these changes came automatically, okay? Those of us who live in these territories woke up to find our Disney Plus app looking completely different, okay? Nothing had to be done in order to bring about those changes, at least not in the UK. I think it might be different in other territories, but here in the UK, things just happened overnight, okay? And all of a sudden we had Star as a part of our app, which honestly I think is just so simple. It's perfect. It's exactly what I would have wanted. I do believe it does mean that the app takes up slightly more space on your phone. So if you were already stretching the gigabytes of your phone, I would suggest you deleting some other things because that app may have gotten heftier. Other than that, there was no other changes that we actively had to make in order for it to happen, which I very much appreciate. Now, as I already mentioned, Disney's primary motivation for creating Star in the first place is to drop a ton of adult-focused content on its platform. Now, the term adult content sounds dodgy as hell. It sounds really, really dodgy, but it essentially means that Disney is no longer this family-friendly platform that it was advertised as being upon launch. And in fact, Disney made a point of highlighting the fact that if you're on Disney Plus, you don't have to worry about things like parental controls, things like kids accidentally clicking on content that they probably shouldn't because it isn't directed towards their age groups. This is initially how Disney Plus was advertised to the consumer, to present the idea of this kid-friendly, family-friendly platform to its consumers as a huge positive, as a huge boon. But ultimately, they knew from the get-go that this was not going to last because they needed to make use of the huge Fox library that they had gained through the acquisition, especially considering that this was a huge motivator for purchasing Fox in the first place, to utilize this huge, extensive library to beef up its streaming service. I think ultimately Disney knew all along that somewhere down the line this promise of no need for parental controls would definitely fall apart. And that's exactly what has happened. Upon the launch of Star, we have seen the introduction of these parental controls. If you have younger kids and they can access their own profile that will have parental controls on them so that they won't be able to access any content that is above their age range. As a result of Star landing on Disney Plus earlier this week, we did manage to get a good look at what exactly Disney got for its money, the billions that it spent on Fox, because let me tell you, that is a ton of money that Disney was investing into this app before we even knew it was a possibility. I was very interested to see the content that we were actually getting from Disney Plus after the inclusion of Star, and let me tell you, it is impressive. Like, it is very, very impressive. In an age where other studios are clamoring for shows, paying hundreds of millions for shows like Friends, The Office, in order to supplement their own streaming services, it makes complete sense that Disney would have gone down the route of just buying Fox. Buying Fox when it was up for sale so that it could beef up its own app. And honestly, seeing the result of that is quite impressive because we have a huge array of content that makes Disney Plus so much more diverse in the type of content that it offers than it ever was before. We have shows like Family Guy, American Dad, Atlanta, Blackish, Bones, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Desperate Housewives, Futurama, Glee, Grey's Anatomy, How I Met Your Mother, Scandal, Lost, Modern Family, Prison Break, Scrubs, Sons of Anarchy, and Ugly Betty, etc., etc. I mean, the list just goes on. The scrolling just goes on. We'll talk about that in a second. But it is so impressive. It is so impressive, especially for the shows that I just listed, where these shows have hours upon hours upon hours of content to watch because they went for seasons upon seasons upon seasons. I mean, we're talking about Grey's Anatomy here. We're talking about Family Guy here. Like, you never need to leave the app now. You never need to leave the app ever again. And this is not even taking into account the movies, the huge film library that Disney has inherited from Fox as well, because that is also massive. And again, it's such a diverse range of films that you're going going to attract a huge audience with that kind of library. I mean, it's a one fell swoop type of situation where with the adoption of Star in their platform, Disney Plus has become much more of a dominating force. And that is exactly what it needs to be in this landscape of the streaming wars. Because all of these streaming services have become so much more competitive. We have, of course, Netflix, which is just miles upon miles ahead because of its like decade advantage. But Disney Plus is catching up very, very quickly. And now with the inclusion of the content from Star, which is more, adult focused content, it's definitely going to be bridging that gap between Netflix and itself sooner rather than later. And we've already seen that Disney Plus exceeded its expectations when it comes to its projected subscriptions, because it predicted that it would reach 90 million, I believe, subscriptions in 2024, and it's already surpassed that number in 2021. But I have to say, even with all of this taken into consideration, Disney Plus still isn't the perfect service, at least not in my eyes. I feel like not enough people talk about the platform itself when they're discussing Disney Plus and whether or not this model has been successful, because let me tell you, I have some qualms with Disney Plus, the app itself, the platform itself. Now, I'm not a website developer. I can't code. I don't know Java. Okay, I'm not that girl. I'm not your girl for any of that, but I know a good streaming service when I see one. And when I see one is when I'm on the Netflix website. That's when I see a good streaming service, because like I said, Netflix has had that decade advantage, and so it's had plenty of time to develop the perfect streaming service. And I think that is a huge reason why Netflix just feels so much more established and just so much easier to navigate. Because let me tell you, Disney Plus is quite difficult to navigate. Disney Plus is not the easiest thing to navigate in the world, and Apple TV Plus even harder still, but we're not talking about that today. That's a story for another video. But Disney Plus could stand to make some improvements of the platform itself and not just the content that it includes. Now, first of all, before we even had the huge influx of content upon the release of Star, I personally felt like Disney Plus as a platform was a little bit jumbled, a little bit disorganized. It wasn't as pleasing to the eye. Now, first of all, when it comes to Netflix's formula, a huge factor in the appeal of its content, it's thumbnails. Netflix understands the importance of good thumbnails to the point where it actually has an AI that generates the best possible thumbnails for you personally, because these thumbnails are actually personalized to each viewer, which is absolutely fascinating, absolutely terrifying, but it's very effective. And so when I look at my Netflix feed, it very much suits me. It very much appeals to me in a way that the Disney Plus feed doesn't as much. Now, again, this was already a problem before we even got this huge influx of content, but now now it's a whole mess. Like, now I don't even know where to look. Things are just all over the place. The homepage is okay. Like, the homepage is doable. It's very similar to Netflix in that it's split up row by row with different genres, or the continuing to watch section, or the new on Disney Plus section, which scarcely changes. We'll talk about that in a second. But that homepage is fine, I guess. I don't really have any major issues with the homepage. The problem comes when you start to click on series or movies, because wow, when it comes to the movies, the genres are organized in such a chaotic way that makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. There is no reason why if I click on drama, I should be seeing Cheetah Girls 2. I love the Cheetah Girls. Do not get me wrong even for a second. I adore the Cheetah Girls. But why are they under drama? That makes no sense. And not only that, but they would fall very neatly under, teenage content or even musicals. Can you believe that Disney Plus doesn't have a musicals section for its movies? Make it make sense. Who's doing these categories? Who's doing these genres? Because they don't need to be fired. I don't want people losing their jobs over this, but they need to be talked to. They need to be given a firm talking to, because it's Disney Plus. How do you not have a musical section for your films? Didn't Disney help invent musicals? What's going on? I shouldn't be seeing Cheetah Girls 2 under drama. That makes no sense. And not only that, but in each of these categories where you used to only have kid-friendly content, now you have this bizarre array of content. Like, you could be looking at a Winnie the Pooh and right next to it you'll see a Deadpool 2. Like, it's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. This is a case of, in theory, this is an excellent idea, okay, and business-wise, this is an excellent idea of including adult content, but it's all about the execution. And right now, I think Disney needs to work on its execution because it's wrong. We shouldn't be seeing Deadpool next to Winnie the Pooh, next to Bambi, which was also in the drama section, by the way. That makes no sense to me. Although, no, it still doesn't make any sense to me. But anyways, it's the categorization, it's the organization of the actual content on the page. It's way too packed together. They're not split apart by, decade or by genre. It's just this huge lump of A to Z films within that category, which doesn't look appealing. I mean, you want to talk about scrolling for years on Netflix, you'd be scrolling for decades on Disney Plus. You'd be scrolling for decades on Disney Plus. Your grandkids will be watching Disney Plus with you by the time that you find a film to watch. And your grandkids will grow up thinking that watching something is just scrolling through the app. Also, as a small side note, I do find it hilarious that Disney Plus has a kids category for its films. That makes no sense to me. Who is actually doing this? It makes no sense. You should have categories for each age group on Disney Plus. Like, we need to be specific here. You should have a 0 to 5 and maybe 6 to 10 or 6 to 11, and then, a 16 plus category, which they do have, and then 18 plus as per the parental controls. But we need to be dividing it into smaller categories because Disney Plus is like a kids platform. How can you have a kids category? And not only that, but if you click on the kids category, first of all, there's not even all of the kids content on there, so it makes no goddamn sense. Like, there's literally only 5 rows of content, and it's like, that's not all of the kids stuff that you guys have. You literally have thousands of titles for kids. How is it? Whatever. But then also, the kids category for some reason is chaotic as hell. It's chaotic as I literally don't know if it's just my Disney Plus, but the kids category gave up, okay? It gave up on the alphabetical order nonsense, okay? Because all of the other categories are listed in alphabetical order, but this one, Dumbo is next to Winnie the Pooh, which is next to the Cheetah Girls, which is next to whatever. Like, the kids category just gave up. It reminds me of the nursery in Toy Story 3, where the young kids were playing with their toys and it was a mess. Like, that's what the kids category reminds me of. It's a mess. And finally, after all that, if you do manage to find something to watch on Disney Plus, good luck navigating that too, because there is this annoying thing about Disney Plus that I truly don't understand why they don't just copy Netflix for, but there's no next episode button on Disney Plus. Like, why? Why? Like, I just don't understand. You have this perfect template in Netflix, okay? They've perfected their platform over the course of a decade, over a decade at this point. Why don't you just copy Netflix, but make it blue with mouse ears for Disney Plus? Like, it just seems so instinctual to me. Now, my guess is, and again, I'm not familiar with this industry, but my guess is that maybe some of the technology that Netflix uses is patented, and therefore other streaming platforms can't use a next episode button or a button that allows you to click on the right hand corner and navigate through different seasons and different episodes whilst you're watching the show still, because you can't do that on Disney Plus and you can on Netflix. You'll be watching an episode of a series and you can just click on the bottom right hand corner and navigate your way through the entire series that is available on the platform. And I just don't understand why Disney won't include that feature. Like, it's been over a year now. Just copy Netflix. Has no one complained about this? But again, maybe it's a patenting thing, maybe it's an IP thing, because honestly, a lot of other streaming services don't have those buttons available on their platform. I did check and see that Amazon Prime does have a next episode button, but you still can't navigate through an entire series or different seasons of a show as you're watching the show itself. You can't, click on that little right hand corner in order to navigate your way through the show the way that you can on Netflix. And in the case of Apple TV Plus, don't even mention it. Like, don't even worry about that one, because that whole platform is a mess. It needs restructuring from the ground up, which is crazy because it's owned by Apple, which is a Silicon Valley company. Like, how are you messing up a streaming service? Whatever. We'll talk about Apple TV Plus in another video. But overall, as I said, I do think that the platform of Disney Plus itself, the interface itself, does need some work in order to make it a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more personalized, and a little bit more organized, so that it's easier to find something to watch and you're not scrolling endlessly until your great-great-grandchildren are born. Another issue that I would say Disney Plus still has, even with the advent of Star, is that it doesn't have enough new original content. Now, I already mentioned this in my previous video on Disney Plus, but it was quite understandable at that point, and still to this day it's very understandable because of all of the delays that Disney suffered as a result of the COVID pandemic situation. Okay, we already know what happened there. So many of their projects were delayed in shooting and therefore in the release. So I understand there is this huge backup of content that is supposed to go out on Disney Plus, and there is a schedule that has been formed for 2021, which is looking quite healthy, looking quite interesting and exciting and healthy. So we should be seeing an influx of original content from Disney Plus this year. But we're also, in addition to that, going to be getting some Star original content, as we've also seen on the platform so far, with the case of Big Sky and the TV series Solar Opposites, which apparently was originally on Hulu anyway, so it makes sense that it just kind of made its way to Disney Plus. But Solar Opposites, I did watch the first 2 episodes of Solar Opposites, which apparently its second season is going to be coming, at least in America, at the end of March. And I have to say, I have no idea. I have no idea how Justin Roiland has gotten away with creating a show, again, that is literally the exact same as Rick and Morty. Literally the exact, I'm actually baffled, literally the exact same as Rick and Morty, but with just aliens as the main character. There's nothing different about that show. But yeah, ultimately I do think that another priority that Disney definitely has to hone in on is providing us with some Star original content. Now, it has already planned to do this, and in fact a lot of this original content will be, territorially based, just like with Netflix, where you have a ton of original content that comes from different international studios. I think Disney Plus will be doing a very similar thing with Disney Plus proper, but also with Star, to give us original content that is territory specific. So I'm very interested to see what they do on that front, and I hope that they get to it as quickly as possible, because right now things are looking a little bit thin in the original content category. Now, finally, let's talk about money. Let's talk about the money, honey, okay? Because one of the major factors for Disney Plus being so popular, I strongly believe, is that it's very, very cheap. It's one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, streaming service available, coming out to $5.99 a month. Definitely something that very much helps seals the deal for a ton of customers, the fact that it is so affordable, especially in a streaming landscape that seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and therefore even more expensive than traditional cable used to be. However, you can't expect something for nothing, and on the fateful day of the 23rd of February, the 2021, I very much expected to see a huge hefty price tag to go along with the huge hefty influx of content on Disney Plus as a result of the incorporation of Star. But instead, to my shock and horror, I'm almost afraid to even say this because I'm scared that capitalism will win once again, but instead of the expected increase to like $10.99 a month, the doubling of content on Disney Plus as a result of the inclusion of Star will only cost customers £2 extra, making the total price $7.99 a month. That is crazy to me. And to make things even better for us all, for those of us who are already active subscribers to Disney Plus and are already paying the $5.99 price point, we will continue to pay the $5.99 price point until I believe August of 2021, where the price will increase for us as well, which is absolutely phenomenal. But speaking of no extra cost, okay, and the price of Disney Plus, it has to be noted that Disney has decided to move ahead with the Premier Access release strategy, the likes of which we saw with the release of Mulan done in 2020. And this time around, we will be seeing the same strategy go ahead for Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, I'm still wholly against this. I still think that the price point of $30/£20 is still far too high. Like, way too high. Are you kidding me? It makes sense business wise, and actually financially speaking, it also does make sense, because if you take into account the cost of going to the cinema with a family, especially to see Raya and the Last Dragon, it would probably end up being quite a bit cheaper, especially if you take into account travel costs, snacks, you know, stuff like that. It does end up being quite a bit cheaper to see this film at home, even with the £30 price point. And a lot of people unfortunately have come to some very difficult financial circumstances, so perhaps a ton of these people wouldn't have even gone to see this film in the cinema to begin with, so that might be a non-issue for them, and seeing this hefty price point will just put them off seeing the film entirely, at least until it becomes available for no extra cost, I think 3 months after when it drops on Disney Plus as a regular release, just like Mulan did. So I think a lot of people will just be willing to wait for its release with no extra cost on the platform. And I think it's especially unfortunate because now they've tested this weird release strategy out with 2 films that feature Asian female leads. I really hope that people's aversion against this release strategy doesn't influence their views of the films themselves, especially because these films center on characters that are very much underrepresented in Hollywood, and I think it's a shame that they're being used as these test subjects for this questionable release strategy. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Disney Plus and the launch of Star, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of all of this down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.